Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. In today's episode, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its Ukrainian proxy forces. Now, very interesting headlines that are starting to pop up over the last 24 hours. France, 24. U.S. will drop Ukraine's ceasefire efforts if progress is not made soon, Trump says. Luxembourg Times, U.S. open to recognizing Crimea as Russian in Ukrainian peace deal. So what's happening? What is going on? Is this President Trump making these decisions? Ultimately, no, it's not. It is the advisors to the president. It is the military analysts. It is the generals that understand that Russia is executing a war of perpetual pressure. Furthermore, the United States and or its military leadership is looking further into the future than what many EU states may be looking at. What are they looking at? Well, they fully understand that the Ukraine, the borderlands, are a red line for the Russian Federation in NATO's eastward expansion towards Russia. That Ukraine, is the final straw in which Russia will not allow the Ukraine to become part of this Western anti-Russian Federation alliance of neoliberalism. Furthermore, it is to the benefit of whatever remains of the Ukraine. It is to the benefit, listen carefully, of whatever remains of the Ukraine. Let's go over to this other map briefly. That the eastern portions of the Ukraine are not part of the decision-making process of Western Ukraine. Why is that? The people, the citizens that live in eastern Ukraine, east of the Dnipro River, citizens that live in Odessa and other areas in eastern Ukraine, have bonds inside the Russian Federation that are greater than those of Western Europe. So let's say hypothetically there is a ceasefire and large portions of eastern Ukraine remain inside of what is the Ukraine. Now we can say the borders are fixed as they are. Okay? You have this land corridor that extends down to Crimea. This becomes part of the Russian Federation. But these other areas that have not yet been incorporated into the Russian Federation are going to be sympathetic to Russia. At a certain point, there will be an internal struggle. There will be a change in the political outlook of the Ukraine. Those voices that continue to exist in eastern Ukraine, and there are millions of them, could seek to collapse whatever pro-Western government exists in Western Ukraine. The long-term outlook of having these areas east of the Dnieper River remain in whatever is left of the Ukraine proper under Zelensky and whoever follows Zelensky is not going to bode well for a positive relationship with Western Europe. Eventually that will turn. It'll change. And that's just one scenario. That is the non-military scenario. Now, as we look what is happening right now within the context of the war of perpetual pressure continues. The military leaders in the United States fully understand that the red line for the Russian Federation was crossed long ago. And Russia will continue to prosecute this war until all war goals and war aims are concluded. And in all likelihood, as the war of perpetual pressure continues, as I've talked about before, we will see the general collapse of the Ukrainian military. We will see Russia at some point seize large expanses of territory east of the Dnieper River. War goals, war aim: Kharkov, Odessa, Sumy, Chernihiv, Kiev. We don't believe at this point the Russians have given up on these war goals. And thus, the war will continue. And thus, we are seeing the Trump administration understanding that the war is going to continue, that Russia will continue to fight. Russia has converted its economy to a wartime economy. The EU has not. The EU still relies on the United States for direct infusion of military aid. And it's simply just not going to be enough in terms of just Europe standing alone with the Ukrainians, with the Western Ukrainians, to prevent a Russian victory, an eventual Russian victory. But again, even if we were to freeze the conflict, the political situation inside of the Ukraine will eventually change. These bonds that exist between the Russian people and the Russian people that live in the Ukraine, the borderlands, are omnipresent. They are one of the same people. They share a same history. They share a language. They share a religion. Those are bonds that cannot be severed. Or if they were to be severed, it would take drastic action by the existing Ukrainian government with the direct support of Western Europe. Case in point, Zelensky attempting to remove the Russian Orthodox Church. Anything Russian is bad and must be removed. That is counter to success. Ultimately, that is going to breed massive amounts of animosity. Now, whatever his EU handlers are telling him and whatever he's doing to some extent in regards of this anti-Russian propaganda and this anti-Russian activity, it is eventually going to do more harm than good. It is going to hurt the long-term cause of a EU-centric Ukraine. Again, language, culture, religion, shared history. That is a tough nut to crack. And it exists very much in the eastern and central portions of the Ukraine. Eventually things will change, and you will see an anti-EU sentiment start to take place. That already exists, and it will only deepen. So analysts here in the United States, the actual decision makers, fully understand that this is a no-win situation for the United States and, in reality, for the EU to continue to meddle with Russia over the borderlands. The war of perpetual pressure will continue. The war of attrition will continue. And then ultimately, Russia will be victorious. I guarantee it. As always, thank you for joining us. More to come very soon. Good day.